Alright, let me just get straight into it. We know the concept, it's nothing unique, but just note that I will be judging these bosses mainly on solo, despite the game clearly being focused and built around multiplayer, but whatever, it's my list, shut up. At number 8, yeah, no controversial pick here. The jellyfish blob thing is the worst boss in the game, although I don't believe it's as atrocious as a lot of you say it is. The first fight I had with this thing was shambolic, to put it lightly. I think I got extremely unlucky with RNG, with the amount of times he threw his sperm at me. It's not hard to avoid, but my god, he was constantly flying away to the point I barely hit him in the entire fight. But honestly, there's a lot of times and opportunities to do damage to him. Yes, even with a melee build. The problem is with this fight is, it's just boring. He has like 7 moves and pretty much all of them aren't very engaging. The redeeming features of this fight is, it's probably the most calming, peaceful boss I've ever fought, which fits as the boss is associated with sleep. Yeah, maybe fighting a boss shouldn't be designed to make you feel sleepy, but whatever. It's quite unique, I suppose. Although I do prefer the high intensity boss fights. This boss is mediocre, but thankfully, this is the only boss that I will be saying that for in this list. Although, I would say that Nosta is bordering on mid. To be fair, this boss feels more designed for multiple players rather than solo, like most of the other bosses, but this one I feel even more so. You'll be scrapping with the scorpion thing for the majority of the fight, while avoiding the few attacks the moth has. By the way, what one of these critters is actually Nosta? Anyway, most of the moth's attacks are fine and easy to avoid. I mean, it only has like 3 or 4 moves, but yeah. The magic attacks it does usually strike the scorpion as long as you are close to it. It's just the poison spray that the moth does that is a bit jarring. Also, I know a parasite can be stuck to your head and instantly kill you. To be honest, I don't actually know how this mechanic really works. The scorpion moveset is also very simple. The move where it burrows under the ground to eventually burst out and attack you always gives me a bit of trouble. Phase 2 for me is easier than the first phase, as I can actually see both of the enemies on my screen, rather than the moth flying all over the place, like they do in my room every summer. This move is kind of bullshit though. Lastly, this may be the, I don't like using this word, but cutest boss I've ever fought, which is surprising for me to say because I find moths terrifying in real life. But I don't know, when they start working together in phase 2, along with the joyful music, it's kind of sad that I have to put them down. So Gladius in his standard Cerberus form is a very enjoyable fight. Dodging his chainsword attacks is very satisfying, and even his standard bite attacks are fine, unlike the Red Wolf fights, which for some reason I have a very hard time with. When he splits off into 3, as a solo player, this obviously can get a bit messy. Yes, I know these bosses are designed for multiple players, but this is my list, shut up. This phase isn't that difficult in solo to be fair, but I mean, it depends. Sometimes one of the wolves goes feral on you, while the other 2 chill in the back. And other times they just all decide to gang up on me. Even then, it's not that hard to avoid. But I swear, sometimes they just decide to do this fire breath attack at the same time, and it's very cheap. But yeah, a very solid first boss to the game. I would have put this boss a bit higher after beating all of the bosses for the first time, but as I fought them more and more, I think Gladius has dropped down a bit. Whereas Adele has jumped up on my list quite a bit compared to the first time I fought him. The main reason for this is due to me realizing that constantly sprinting after him is actually detrimental, as once you sprint to him, he will fling himself away to the opposite side of the arena in his frenzy. But this method of fighting him works, as if you constantly stick to him, he'll barely ever have any real chance to hit you. So yeah, it works, but it's very tedious and unfun. Engaging in the fight properly with letting him always come to me has proven to be more enjoyable and elevated him higher on my list. I pretty much have no problem with his moveset. This grab always used to get me. But yeah, as I said, if you want to actually enjoy the fight, don't make the fight into a running simulator. Let him come to you. Otherwise, it's going to be a miserable experience. Apart from that, I love the design, being a mix of dragon and T-Rex, I suppose. I'd say this boss has the weakest track out of all the Night Lords. To be fair, I can only mostly hear Adele's frantic roars throughout the fight, and it drowns out the music, so I don't really know what the music sounds like. Although I have heard people say that the third phase music is apparently great, but I don't know. I'm not going to listen to it until the enhanced fight comes out. But yeah, solid boss. It's like if the Gaping Dragon was an actual good boss. In every FromSoft game, there's always one boss that I find to be extremely overrated, and for a bit, I thought Caligo was going to be the one from Nightreign. The first couple times I fought her, I thought she was a bit irritating to fight, a bit like Adele, and while I still don't think the mechanics of the actual fight are very good, I can't deny the pure majestic spectacle of it all. I can't forgive mediocre mechanics of a boss if the spectacle, music or atmosphere are strong, and thankfully all these aspects excel in this boss. The presentation is immaculate, and the track is probably the most beautiful song I've ever heard in a FromSoft game. The problem is the boss is about 80% spectacle and 20% fight. It has about 3 or 4 big moves that takes 50 years to complete, with no opportunity to do any damage to her. Now, I'm a patient person, and I would not have a problem with this if the boss, apart from these 4 big moves it does, apart from these moves, there's not a lot of opportunities to hit her in a general moveset. For example, the only moves that give you a decent window of opportunity to do damage to her is if you are close enough to her head when she breathes ice at you, and her big tail slash, and even then, she places ice all over the ground, so when capitalizing on her, you're gonna get frostbite up your ass. So yeah, overall, I've come to really like this boss, despite its many flaws. However, I do think it is a bit overrated with how I see people talking about it. It ain't better than Medea, Bale, or even Placidusax. Calm down. I don't have much to say about Fulgor, it's just a great fight. His first phase moveset is pretty simple but fun. His main go-to move is this one where he summons holy explosions all around the arena for a while you continue to fight him. This can be quite difficult, unless you have a lightning weapon which can break him out of this move. All the bosses have a massive weakness to a specific element or ailment. I actually like this gimmick, and in this fight, it's definitely the most effective out of all of them. Interrupting this move by smacking him with lightning is very satisfying. If you don't have a lightning weapon, this fight will be significantly more challenging. As for phase 2, Manus from Dark Souls 1 starts growing out of Fulgor's missing arm. I mean, that is a joke, but honestly, maybe not, since Dark Souls bosses appear in this game, and Fulgor is called the Dark Drift Knight. Anyway, I wasn't really a fan of his new armor moves, as some seemed impossible to avoid by dodging. I just ran away once he started up one of these attacks. But after I figured out I could dodge all of these attacks and not run like a coward, I have very positive feelings on this phase. To finish, the music is yet again a banger, and the design is very cool. Once I saw that a centaur was going to be in the game in promotional screenshots, I had a feeling this boss was going to be one of the better fights in this game, and it turns out I was correct. Libra is one of the most unique fights in any FromSoft game. Out of all the bosses in this game, he was the most fun for me to learn as a result of the amount of variation involved in the battle. Starting off with the option to make a deal with him before the fight begins, this can include adding more healing at the cost of lowering your HP and other shit like that. Yeah, I always just refuse to make a deal with him. I don't deal with the devil, which this boss is clearly inspired by. I enjoy his standard moveset, which primarily contains a bunch of projectiles and AoE moves. Yeah, that may not sound too fun on paper, but I never found it irritating. It isn't that difficult to avoid. unless he manages to buff up if you let him without interruption, then moves like this will be more troublesome. For example, this portal of shooting frenzy will now constantly spin around rather than stay stationary. Plus, in this buffed up version, he has more damage resistance and he ends this period of added strength by doing some creepy fucking ritual which builds up madness till your brain explodes. However, you can counter this by running around collecting these balls of whatever they are to negate frenzy build-up. This is a nice mechanic as it means you don't have to waste a consumable slot by having frenzy boluses stashed in your inventory at all times. What's unique about Libra is this isn't a traditional FromSoft second phase. In a way, you decide what phase he goes in, as if you break him out of his transformation with either breaking these seals or by using a powerful character skill or action as he meditates. Raider is very good for this boss fight, by the way, as both of his character skills and ultimate actions can break him out of this meditation. He will go into a frenzy and have a completely different moveset with a lot more chaotic moves that look very flashy. I'd say a nitpick I have about this phase is that there's pretty much no chance to hit him, as he constantly does moves that give you barely any window of opportunity to hit him, which is somewhat of a problem since this phase is presumably supposed to be a reward for beating him out of his buffed up version. So yeah, the fight itself is very varied and also extremely intense, which is enhanced by its absolutely nuts music, my favourite track in the game. I'm terrified of what the incoming third phase is going to be like for Libra, judging by his unused third phase music. Perhaps his third phase will put him at number 1 on this list eventually, but for now, he's beaten out by come on, how is this not number 1? It's funny because obviously Nightreign's bosses are clearly designed for co-op. Hollister, funnily enough, genuinely feels more designed to be fought one-on-one. The only real gimmick he has that works against multiple players is his third phase where his basic attacks send a bunch of AoE everywhere. Anyway, let's start from the beginning. The first half of his first life bar basically consists of bullying him as he's a decrepit cripple mummy with 1 arm. But then he gains an extra 2 or 3 arms, I think it's 3, I don't even know, and uses one of them to wield the Moonlight Greatsword. I didn't need the sword to start glowing in phase 2 to realise that's what the sword was. So in phase 2 he gains a few new moves with the now lit Moonlight Greatsword, but from when he gains more arms in the first phase, his basic moves remain the same throughout the rest of the fight, which might be a criticism for some, but for me his moveset is great, so it's not a big deal. It reminds me a lot of first phase Gale, which is good as unpopular opinion, but gameplay wise I prefer phase 1 Gale to phase 2 or 3 Gale. And of course the third phase where Hollister splits the sky open to absorb one of the elements of the other Night Lords. This has to be the coolest move FromSoft have ever cooked up. He can summon up to 7 of these elements, which technically make him probably the most replayable boss in the series if you think about it, as his third phase can be different every time you fight him. Yes, his moveset hasn't changed fundamentally, but still. Now his moves add trails of whatever element he's using, which forces you to be more attentive on what direction you roll in, and not just roll in any direction to avoid moves. This phase ends with him doing an extremely flashy combo, ending in a massive AoE, which I've only now started to avoid. He then reverts to phase 2 for a while, before slicing open the sky once again to absorb a new power. Yeah, this boss is great. Gameplay, presentation, and also the music. It definitely does remind me of a Dark Souls 3 boss. Anyway, these bosses are getting enhanced fights very soon, so this list will most likely prove to be irrelevant. But yeah, that's my ranking. Goodbye.